A huge green vortex suddenly opened above the battlefield. From inside it, a gigantic monster arm pushed its way out. The moment it appeared, the massive arm smashed straight through the world-level magic skill Heaven's Descent. Streams of holy light shattered instantly, and golden fragments scattered across the sky like broken glass. Lynn Tion watched the destruction in front of him. From the look on his face, it was clear he understood something important. The power in this place had already reached a level far beyond anything he had dealt with before. Not long after that, an enormous figure appeared in front of him. It looked like a towering skeleton wearing armor with golden edges. This figure was the Bone King Veronica. Veronica spoke to Lynn Tion and thanked him, saying he had been extremely useful as bait against the Pope. Because of his help, she had gained enough time to complete the supreme spell Hand of Calamity. She also made it clear that she hadn't come alone. Behind her stood a massive legion of gigantic monsters, all ready to finish the battle. With confidence in her voice, Veronica told Lynn Tion that the situation was already decided. From this moment onward, her side would take control of this place. She then ordered him to go back and lead the goblin army to wipe out the remaining knights. Lynn Tion acted as if he was badly wounded. He told her he needed treatment and said he felt like he might not survive much longer. Veronica showed no interest at all. To her, a pawn that had already served its purpose didn't matter anymore. She simply told him that if he could no longer fight, he should just stay where he was. Someone would come treat him after the battle ended. Lynn Tion didn't look surprised by her response. His expression turned calm and cold. He commented that Veronica's plan was quite clever. From the moment their goal was achieved, they had already decided to throw him aside. Lynn Tion also wondered out loud if they were really that worried about him growing too strong. Then he quietly remarked that if they could treat him with that kind of attitude, they shouldn't complain when he decided to take back everything he had built. Lynn Tion slipped his hand inside his cloak and pulled out a strange potion. Without hesitation, he opened the bottle and drank all of it in one gulp. In his mind, he had already made a decision. He would never let anyone treat him like a tool again. Meanwhile, the monster army from the Great Tomb advanced forward like a massive wall of flesh and muscle. The gigantic creatures marched toward the Pope's forces, their eyes filled with violent hunger as they stared at the holy knights. On the opposite side, Pope Douglas and the people around him watched the approaching monsters with visible fear. Douglas raised his voice and demanded to know what Veronica really wanted. He asked why she insisted on continuing the battle and causing even more death. From the way he spoke, it seemed he was truly tired of the endless killing. Veronica immediately rejected his words. She said the Pope himself was the real reason behind all those deaths. According to her, all she had ever wanted was to live an ordinary life, but the Church had always interfered with the affairs of the Great Tomb. Douglas shouted back angrily. He said that talking about an ordinary life made no sense for her. In his view, she had died long ago and now existed as nothing more than a skeleton. He said someone like her should simply remain buried in a grave. Veronica responded with a mocking tone. She pointed out that Douglas was already very old and standing close to death anyway. She even suggested that he might as well become her subordinate. At least that way, just like his son, he wouldn't die from old age. When Douglas saw his own son standing behind Veronica like a puppet, his anger exploded. His face twisted as he shouted in rage, unable to accept what had happened to his family's bloodline. Veronica didn't seem interested in arguing any longer. She raised the staff in her hand and pointed it directly at him. She told him that this battlefield wasn't the place for their final fight and suggested they settle everything today. Right after that, she cast the spell Kingdom of Darkness. The moment the spell activated, both Veronica and Pope Douglas disappeared at the same time, entering a separate battlefield meant only for the two of them. Nearby, Abito laughed with excitement. She said it was finally their turn to fight. Without delay, she ordered her subordinates to eliminate every member of the church. The battlefield quickly descended into chaos as the two armies collided. Swords clashed against claws, and the knights struggled to hold their formation. But the monsters were far too strong. Obito moved across the battlefield at incredible speed. Every attack she launched brought down another knight. Seeing his soldiers being cut down one after another, the bishop finally stepped in. He summoned a massive golden cross and called out sacred execution as holy light burst from his hands. The glowing cross shot forward and struck Obito in midair, forcing her down to the ground. The force of the attack sent powerful shockwaves across the battlefield. Obito cried out as the holy light burned her body. She tried with all her strength to break free, but the bishop's sacrificial magic was far too powerful. She couldn't escape. Then she looked up and saw something terrifying. A blazing pillar of fire was falling from the sky. The bishop had already made his decision. He was prepared to sacrifice his own life to completely destroy her with one final purification spell. At that exact moment, a dark hand with sharp claws settled on Obito's shoulder. Right as the incoming strike was about to reach her, Alice appeared in her darkened form and pulled Obito away from the spot. She swung her blade in a smooth motion, cutting through the glowing magical fragments raining down from the sky. The clash rang out across the battlefield, and in the next instant the bishop's attack was sliced apart. But the moment that attack broke, a beam of golden light suddenly appeared right in front of Alice. The distance was too close and the speed was too fast. There was no time for her to move away. Then, without warning, a burst of flames smashed straight into the golden beam. The beam shattered instantly. When the dust slowly cleared, Alice was still standing. Even so, she showed no appreciation for Obito's help. In a cold tone, she said she would personally deal with the archbishop. At that point, the archbishop was already close to losing control. He begged the Holy Mother to allow him to use the most forbidden sacrificial magic. According to him, the darkness had to be purged. He said the monster Alice had to be destroyed, even if it meant giving up his own life. The Holy Mother told him to calm down. She reminded him that their mission was simply to keep the monsters in place. The Pope would return soon. The Archbishop clenched his teeth. He clearly understood the price of the spell he wanted to use. It would cost him his life. But in his view, if he waited any longer, he might not even get the chance to die in battle. The Holy Mother stayed silent for a moment. She fully understood the terrible cost of the magic he was asking for. With deep sorrow in her heart, she finally cast a supreme spell. Flame of Atonement. It was a super-tier magic that turned his body into a vessel for divine wrath. Alice and Obito both stared at the transformation. They quickly realized what had happened. The Archbishop had touched the power of an angel. To be precise, the power of a 12-winged seraphim. Anyone who used this spell would burn to ashes after 10 minutes. But during those 10 minutes, their power would rise to terrifying levels. Alice narrowed her eyes as she felt the heat rising from the ground. She told Obito that the next 10 minutes were going to be hell for everyone. For now, she suggested they move away from this place. Meanwhile, the Archbishop stood surrounded by holy flames. His power kept climbing higher and higher as he shouted that every monster would be burned to ashes. He had traded his future for 10 minutes of absolute destruction. Then he shot down from the sky like a meteor. The impact created a massive crater, and even the ground began to melt under the intense divine power. The shock wave blasted Obito far away, and blood spilled from her mouth as she was thrown back. Alice barely managed to stay upright while violent winds from the explosion pushed against her. The Archbishop rushed forward and threw a blazing punch directly at Alice. He shouted that her judgment had finally arrived. A gigantic pillar of fire erupted, sweeping forward and wiping out everything in its path. Nothing remained behind it except ashes. Alice watched the attack racing toward her. Every possible escape route had already been blocked. For a brief moment, she accepted that this was the end. Then suddenly, a pair of shining golden boots stepped onto the grass. King Charles II had arrived, wearing legendary golden armor. He calmly walked forward and positioned himself in front of Alice, standing between her and the incoming attack. He took the entire blast head-on. Alice stared at him, stunned by what she was seeing. She couldn't believe that someone had stepped in front of that attack to protect her. King Charles II gave a gentle smile and softly called Alice's name. At that moment, he looked like a father who had finally managed to do something for his daughter.